I consider myself a very character-oriented writer. I'm all about character arcs. They're my favorite things ever. But only recently did I become all about character relationship arcs. In the course of my research, I found there are relatively few sources out there that discuss developing character relationships in fiction. So, to solve that problem, I developed a quasi-mathematical equation to help me and other writers understand the basics of character relationships. Let's start with a confession. I'm going to be honest right up front. I hate math. No, I don't just hate it. I loathe it. I'm an English major, for crying out loud. But I have found that very simple math can help visually explain important principles of fiction. If you hate math too, maybe I can convince you that this is at least worth looking at. My goal. I want to give you an equation that can help you understand how relationships work in real life. Purpose. So you can improve your characters' relationships and, by extension, the overall story in your work in progress. Disclaimer. I am not a relationship expert by any means. I'm not a psychologist or a therapist, but I do have some experience with relationships in my own life, and as it turns out, that's really all you need. Okay, let's begin with character arcs. In K.M. Weiland's Creating Character Arcs, she writes, "Too often, character and plot are viewed as separate entities, to the point that we often pit them against each other, trying to determine which is more important. But nothing could be further from the truth. Plot and character are integral to one another. Remove either one from the equation, and you risk creating a story that may have some awesome parts, but which will not be an awesome whole." In short, character is inextricably linked to story and plot. Let's put this mathematically. Story equals relationships. This is not the equation I want to talk about, however. The more authentic the relationships are in your fiction, the more authentic your story will be, and the more involved our audience will be. This is because we are social creatures. In general, we strive at all costs to relate to each other. We've developed this trait in order for our species to survive. So, if a protagonist's character arc is integral to the plot, then relationships that protagonist has, whether it be with major or minor characters, form the web of your story. First, let's define what a relationship is, as it will help define necessary terms for the equation. So this is my definition of a relationship. It is a shared experience with obstacles, which informs bias and affects motivation and how that motivation is expressed in the story. Okay, this is a very loaded definition, so let's break it down. Well, first is a relationship isn't shared experience between multiple characters. And this shared experience has obstacles. Third, this shared experience informs character bias or worldview. Fourth, it affects character motivation. Fifth, how that character expresses the motivation throughout the story. Pro tip: obstacles in any character's relationship should always showcase the most important traits in your characters. Let me repeat that again. Obstacles in any character's relationship should always showcase the most important traits in your characters. If you create a list of obstacles that highlight your character's most important traits, character traits, you already have a working outline for your story. Now, for the thing you've all been waiting for, I reveal to you the relationship formula. R equals C plus C, where R equals relationship and C equals character. This is the most basic equation, because the most basic relationships require at least two people. We learned from the definition of relationship that character can be broken up into two terms. Character, C, equals motivation, M, and experience bias, B. Let's discuss these terms. Motivation, the thing that incites the character to act. Their actions are expressions of motivation. In other words, motivation drives an inevitable action response. Without motivation, the character stands and watches the sun set on their lives and dreams. In short, the characters do nothing without motivation. Experience bias. Our own personal experience, which is perceived as the whole truth, rather than just part of the truth. Everyone in the world is biased. It's neither good nor bad. It's just a fact of life. We carry around our own view of the world, called worldviews. And the relationships we develop over the course of our lives inform those worldviews and experience biases. Is this a lot to grasp? Hang in there with me. I'm a visual person, so let's see if we can express this in a visual way. Character C equals motivation M times experience bias B. Therefore, R equals M times B plus M times B, etc. Our relationship equals motivation times experience bias. That's it. If you know your protagonist's motivation and experience bias, or worldview, then you can create interesting relationships with other characters. Okay, next, I want to dive deeper into character motivation and how you can use it to affect character actions within those relationships, and, by extension, make your relationships more real and engaging to the reader. This is, in my opinion, the most important part of this equation. Now, this is not an exhaustive list, only a few ways I came up with. See if you can come up with some on your own. A few ways you can use character motivation to affect how characters act in their relationships are having their motivation reveal their perceived role in the relationship. What are your characters' perceived roles? Who thinks they're the leader? Who thinks they're the follower? There could be some interesting conflict in who perceives what in a relationship. Using a character's conflicting motivations to create tension in the relationship, in which case your relationship might look like this, as if it wasn't complex enough. R equals M1 times M2 times B. The important thing to remember here is that people are complicated and can be motivated by different things, and those motivations can, at times, conflict with each other. For example, let's say you're a farm boy who grew up on a desert planet, and you really want to get off that rock. You help your uncle every year, but can't see an end in sight. Then, suddenly, a space wizard appears and offers you a way to leave, and you suddenly come face to face with your fears. Yes, you're motivated to leave, but this isn't how you imagined it would be. You wanted to join the academy. You're also motivated to help your aunt and uncle run their moisture farm for another year because it's safe. It's the world you know. Your mixed motivations give you pause and cause a little conflict with the space wizard. Next, showing how proactive or not the character is in the relationship. Sometimes a lack of motivation can be a great source of conflict and tension within a relationship. Number 4, tying motivations and relationships intrinsically to the stakes of your story. If stories are about relationships, you could argue that relationships are the stakes in your story. For example, in romance stories, they're all about if the main relationship will survive to the end of the book, which they usually do. Number 5. Pitting a character's worldview against another's. This is great when you have a group of characters that are forced to work together but disagree with each other's point of view or worldview. And number 6, showing how characters' backstories motivate their actions in the present. You could say that a character's motivation is founded on their backstories. You don't need to know your character's entire backstory, but it should be shown in little bite-sized pieces throughout. The list can go on and on. But lastly, I want to give you some questions to think about while you're developing your character's motivations, biases, and relationships. Number 1, motivation. What is your character thinking? 2, bias. Why do they feel that way? 3, relationship. How do the other characters they're interacting with feel and think? Ask these questions for your protagonist, minor characters, and antagonists in every scene, in every action that they make. These questions will help feed into your story's tensions, struggles, and the ultimate outcome of the story. I know some writers will create character relationship arcs in addition to character arcs. They will try and show how relationships evolve over the course of the story, and I really think that's a good idea, and more writers should adopt. You could organize it into a 3-act structure or whatever feels natural to you. Character relationships are complex. They change and evolve over time. We as writers need to spend time learning how they work in real life so we can show them more authentically in our fiction. How does this connect to other learning? The relationship equation connects to the principle of character development, which is a common skill that all writers spend their lives perfecting. In this case, it is a character relationship development. What do I do right now, you might ask? Take your current work in progress or your brand new story and apply the following. Number 1, develop your web of characters. Apply the relationship equation to them by developing their motivations and biases, or worldviews. Create connections between characters that are natural and authentic. Be conscious of the state of various relationships at the beginning of the story. Develop obstacles that showcase important traits in your characters that affect the relationship in the middle of the story. Show the state the relationship has evolved into at the end of the story. You're looking for how one character's motivation and biases, which may not be interesting in and of themselves, make interesting interactions with other characters' motivations and biases. Then, create a relationship arc that evolves over time in a fascinating way. Good luck, and may the Force be with you.